When soldiers marched through the Ardennes in the winter of 1944, snow piled over their boots, rations froze solid, and fires drew deadly attention from enemy patrols. Yet even in those brutal conditions, many stayed warm and fed, not through open flames, but through a small piece of metal that fit in a coat pocket. The WWII pocket stove was a quiet survival tool that kept troops alive when modern gear would have failed. Today's campers, preppers and survivalists often overlook this simple technology, choosing flashy gas burners or bulky cooking systems that freeze, clog or waste fuel in cold weather. The truth is, if you don't understand why those old pocket stoves worked so well, your next cold weather camp could end the same way most modern trips do, with frozen fuel, cold meals and lost body heat when it matters most. The soldier's stove was built for war, not comfort, and that's why it worked. During World War II, troops couldn't afford luxury gear or large fires. The German Esbit stove, the American M1942 MOD, and the British Tommy cooker were designed for one purpose: heat food and melt snow anywhere, under any conditions. These stoves didn't rely on pressurized gas or liquid fuel that could freeze. Instead, they used solid fuel tablets, compact blocks of hexamine or trioxane that burned hot, smokeless and clean. Soldiers carried them in tins no bigger than a deck of cards, with folding metal legs that turned the case into a miniature cooking platform. While modern campers might scoff at such simplicity, these designs solved a problem no modern stove truly can: dependability in freezing conditions. A hexamine tablet ignites easily with a spark, stays lit in wind, and doesn't lose performance as temperatures drop. There's no valve to jam, no canister to puncture, and no need to pump or prime. Soldiers could melt snow for drinking water or heat a can of beans in minutes without giving away their position. The entire stove fit in a pocket and weighed next to nothing, perfect for movement through snow or mud. Modern gas and alcohol stoves fail where old stoves excelled. Anyone who's camped in sub-zero weather knows the frustration of trying to light a butane stove when the fuel refuses to vaporize. Cold air slows the pressure inside the canister, and even when you get a flame, it burns weak and unstable. Alcohol stoves can do better, but they lose efficiency and often spill, wasting precious heat. WWII soldiers faced the same conditions, but used a system that didn't depend on pressure or vaporization. Solid fuel simply burns by chemical reaction, unaffected by altitude or frost. That difference means reliability. The Esbit stove could be buried in snow, opened and lit in seconds. It might not have boiled water as fast as a modern jet boil, but it never failed to do so. In combat or survival, that consistency meant everything. For today's survivalist or camper, it still does. A lightweight, compact stove that works without fail is worth more than a high-performance burner that quits when you need it most. The real value in the WWII design wasn't just portability, it was simplicity under pressure. Soldiers could break a tablet in half, light it with a spark or even a hot bullet casing, and have heat within moments. That kind of no-fail reliability is what separates survival from struggle when the weather turns. Recreating the effectiveness of those wartime stoves isn't about nostalgia. It's about practicality. You don't need to hunt for a vintage model, though. You know, many still work. Modern versions of the Esbit stove are still made today, and the principle really remains the same. A metal frame, solid fuel, and no moving parts. The best setup, in my experience, combines a small folding stove with hexamine or trioxane tablets stored in a waterproof tin. If you're planning a cold weather camp, the method is simple. Keep the stove and a few tablets in your coat pocket or chest pouch so the fuel stays warm from body heat. Cold hexamine can take longer to ignite, so that's a handy tip. When you're ready to cook, just unfold the stove. Place it on a flat surface, like a metal lid or rock, and shield it from direct wind using your backpack or a simple windscreen. One tablet will burn for roughly 12 to 15 minutes, long enough to boil 2 cups of water or heat a meal ration. And if you need a longer burn, just stack a second half tablet once the first begins to fade. To get the most from solid fuel, use cookware that sits close to the flame without smothering it. Mess kits, small titanium pots or canteen cups are ideal, really. This combination mimics exactly how WWII soldiers cooked. Small portions, minimal waste, steady heat. You can also use a solid fuel stove as a backup in your camping kit. When your gas runs out or your liquid fuel clogs, the tablet stove becomes your guaranteed heat source. The lesson of the WWII pocket stove is control and reliability over convenience. The biggest takeaway from this forgotten piece of gear is that survival gear doesn't need to be advanced. It needs to work every single time. The pocket stove was the embodiment of that philosophy. It didn't require instruction, didn't freeze, and didn't break. Soldiers in Italy, Russia, and France all used versions of the same design because it worked in every condition. That's why many veterans continued carrying them into civilian life after the war. Today's outdoor market sells complex stoves that promise instant ignition and ultra-fast boil times, yet few mention their failure rates in cold or wet conditions. Those old pocket stoves, by contrast, were crude but honest. They did one job exceptionally well, turning solid fuel into dependable heat when everything else failed. Learning from that history means thinking differently about your own camp setup. Don't rely solely on gear that depends on pressure, batteries, or complex mechanisms. Have something that works in silence, in cold, and in snow. A tiny metal stove, just like the ones soldiers carried 80 years ago, still holds its place as one of the most practical tools for real-world camping and survival. When you're out in the cold, comfort isn't about luxury. It's about efficiency, reliability, and heat that doesn't quit. The WWII pocket stove proved that small, simple tools can outperform entire systems when conditions turn against you. If this deep dive into lost wartime survival gear gave you a new appreciation for old technology, subscribe to Backyard Wisdom and share this video with other history and outdoor enthusiasts. The forgotten lessons of the past aren't just stories. They're blueprints for surviving the toughest conditions nature can throw at you.